Hey everybody, what's happening? So, I am going in and doing post-commentary on this one, largely because when I was streaming this, we had a small interruption midway through that just required me to pause for a little while, and I don't know, it wasn't anything serious, but I didn't want to run the risk of any background audio being picked up. Now, frankly speaking, I'm not going to call this a do-nothing mission because it does explain how we get to the end point of the game. It kind of feels like one, though, just because nothing is really accomplished. Like, everything that is done here could have been done in the last mission when we took over Sigvart's. So, I don't know, there's no recruitable monsters, even though there's that huge mountain off in the distance. The bases here don't contribute much. You get Shell Shock in one of the bases, which is something that I am going to pick up, just because it makes machines a lot stronger. But yeah, you're just immediately rushed by four enemies that come from the main base, four enemy groups, I should say. All of them are spirit monsters, and they all have power of nature. So if you're running spirits, then you just kind of hope they use that and buff up your guys. But if you want to use power of nature yourself, don't, because it's going to empower them as well. And that's basically it. You've got nothing to worry about. You can try to use the other bases to distract them, but there's really no point. There's especially not much of a point in my case, because, as you can see here, now that we got all three Harpy Ladies, we can do the Triangle Ecstasy Spark. This move right here is one of the most powerful combination attacks in the game. It's not quite the most powerful, largely because it requires all three of them to be here, and it can very easily be interrupted. Plus, you're wasting 2 attack slots from all of them, and it kind of puts them last in the turn order, if I remember right. Like, you can't just chain spam it by getting lucky with all 3 Harpies going in rapid succession. Speaking of that, actually, only Occupete, the blonde Harpy lady, knows it right now, because the others aren't at a high enough level yet. So they will learn it later, but right now she's the only one that has access to it. That's not especially an issue, because it's easy enough to just kind of wait everything out. But seriously, look at this. It does so much damage right away. The Hane Hane is completely obliterated, despite the fact that it's way above our current level. And sure, the critical hit there, mildly annoying, I guess. But functionally, they're just not strong enough to deal with this attack in rapid succession. Okay, if you are fighting a boss that has multiple medicines, for example, they're going to have to just expend their medicines trying to heal off the damage. So then you pretty much get them in a loop where you can keep pummeling them, and they will have to just waste their resources, or you get lucky and finish one of them off right away. So I switch out to try and get my other monsters some level of experience. I double check and see that they can do a little more damage than the first wave, so I'm trying not to push it and just consolidate all my attacks onto one monster. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, it seems like almost every enemy we fight that has an electrical attack, if the Summon Skull is in the fight, they tend to consolidate their attacks against the Summon Skull. I don't understand the reasoning behind that, it's just some really weird RNG I was getting during this run. But going back to the Triangle Ecstasy Spark for a second, that ability alone is part of the reason why Harpies are considered to be a class of their own, because remember, with the limited monster types in this game, Harpies are treated as beast monsters, and so their playstyle is way different compared to the other beasts you would run here. Like, most of them, you'd buff them up with the equipment, or they would be useful for a fusion in the case of Gazelle, which we're going to get Burfomet not too long from now, or actually that's probably most of the utility that beasts have. But Harpies, because of the Triangle Ecstasy Spark, they hold exponentially more use, and it's part of the reason why beasts as a monster type in this game are considered to be better than dragons, potentially better than machines. It's kind of iffy on that, which it boggles my mind that with how overrepresented they are at pretty much every era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe not specific formats per se, but most every main era of the card game, there was at least a point in time where dragons were at least in the conversation for being one of the best monster types. And here they are arguably the worst, because there just aren't a whole lot of items or monster type specific equip weapons or equip items that work for them. They don't have that many special combination attacks. You know, they got the fusion, the ultimate dragon, which is pretty good. A lot of dragons do actually have great fusions, but that's kind of their only real saving grace. So, I don't know, eventually I will go more into depth about that, but, like, you can see why I'm not using a whole lot of dragons, and why losing Winged Dragon Guardian of the Fortress early in the playthrough, this is where the interruption came in, by the way, like, that was mildly inconvenient at the time, largely just because I lost it due to a bad luck critical hit, but it really hasn't handicapped the run in any way, and most of the other dragons we've had access to I just have not really used. And it's unfortunate because, like, there's a good number of them. They had the potential to make a lot of great dragon-style monsters, but because they tried to keep their stat line relative to the actual card game, and because they had to build items around that, you know, there's so many dragons here that start off with, like, over 2,000 attack at level 1, so they had to sort of balance the items around that, but the problem is you don't get most of these dragons until you're way stronger anyway, just because they're so far into the campaigns, so they kind of overbalance that issue. If Joey would have started with Red Eyes, that might have seemed a little overkill, sure, but at the same time, at least you would have gotten a good bit of use out of it. You could have fused it with the Summon Skull right away, you could have done just about anything, I guess. Like right there, Deal of Phantom. That is not monster specific, but it's one of the only good equipped items you can give to a dragon. I don't know why I'm struggling to say equip items. I guess because Yu-Gi-Oh's conditioned me to say equip spell, but I don't know. Also, this is an epic backdrop and we only use it for this fight. Look at that, the candle's even reflecting on the floor, for goodness sakes. But for some reason the monsters aren't, because I guess that was too much work to program. Actually, yeah, wait a minute. How come some of the stuff is reflecting, but the Odeon's monsters just cast a shadow? I only just realized that. Well, whatever the case. They've got medicines, but it's really not worth concerning ourselves with. Just knock them down, simple, straightforward. It's weird because, like, in the lore of this game, Odeon is still acting like he's protecting part of the Empire, but I don't know how Scott managed to program him to just not open the secret room that leads to the end of this world. I don't know. It's probably not worth questioning. I don't think he thought this plan through all the way. Yet somehow he was able to completely ruin us with the power of mass suggestion earlier. Hey, not my business. And I'm not even sure why I didn't wait for it to use its attack. I don't know, guess I just felt like speeding through it. Well, whatever the case. As soon as this is done, we manage to... First, we say goodbye to the most epic backdrop in the game, but more importantly... we resolve that plot thread from a few missions ago. We find Mokuba here, but for some reason, Kaiba and Mokuba do not join us for the ending, and that's consistent across the next campaign too. Go figure.